At the same time, the African Transformation Movement is warning the South African government to prepare for an influx of refugees from Mozambique should the post-election protests continue. Zama Ntshona is the ATM spokesperson and joins me now. Zama, good to have you on the program this evening. So looking at the political unrest in Mozambique, I mean, it has escalated following confirmation of Frelimo's electoral victory. Can you give us a sense of what's happening from what you've gathered on the ground and in Mozambique, and why the ATM believes South Africa must prepare for this said influx of refugees?
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and the viewers. Well, for us as the African Transformation Movement and reports that have surfaced, the issue of fatalities is one worrying factor. The issue around the burning of buildings, the clashes between the citizens and the armed forces or the police within the country, and also what is very worrying also is the issue of the 1,500 inmates who have actually escaped. And it is a worrying fact. Now, that combination of issues, it leads now to a worry that we should have as neighboring countries, as the region. Should this go on any further, and should the citizens seek refuge, the closest border is the South African border. And this is why, as the African Transformation Movement, we believe that this is a matter of concern for two reasons. One, for hospitality reasons. We must be able to practice the principle of Ubuntu. But for the second reason of, there are also individuals who may not have the intended intentions or meaning well for coming to South Africa. We must also be ready for that as well.
Also interesting in your statement, it has called for temporary stations to be set up along the South Africa-Mozambique border to assist refugees. Could you walk us through what these stations would look like in your view and how you envision them functioning in a crisis like this?
Thank you so much. As we all know, we have the official entry point, which is the border gate. But you can imagine that depending on how dire the situation is and where the individual is at the time that they need to come to South Africa, also understanding the state of our borders as well, it is of high importance that we have these stations for two reasons. One, so that we may receive our brothers and sisters that are from Mozambique who are seeking refuge in South Africa. But also for that other reason, which I have stated, that so that we are able to know exactly who we are welcoming in our country. Remember that when we speak about welcoming those who seek refuge, we must be able to say they must be accounted for. So these stations are going to have your border patrol, which would mean that we have Home Affairs present there. But because we do not know if these individuals will all be coming with good intentions, it is important that we have reinforcement. Let's have the army there. Let's have the armed forces of this country working to give support to the border control and the Department of Home Affairs. Primarily, we are moving from a premise that everybody is coming seeking refuge. But because there are 1,500 inmates who have been categorized in all sorts of ways, when you listen to the statements from Mozambique, some of them were incarcerated for treason, some of them for carjacking, some of them for raping, and all sorts of crimes. So this is why we must have a multi-pronged approach. The one that says you can come, which is going to give us hospitality, and we register them, but we must also have the other one that is going to see to it that we're able to isolate the individuals who may cause harm or mean harm to South Africa.
And speaking about immigration issues, but also taking the reference or looking at South Africa's experience with the Zimbabwean exemption permit, for instance, during the crisis in that country, how do you think that model could possibly inform South Africa's response to the growing situation in Mozambique?
This is why it is history has taught us now. You would remember that in the early 80s, Mozambique was faced with a similar situation, if not more. And as a result, reports are suggesting that we then became a place of refuge for more than 350,000 Mozambicans in this country. Such a program needs to be monitored, because currently now in South Africa, if we were to put the Mozambican issue away for a moment, reports are showing that we have immigrants that are close to 5 million in the country. Now, with such huge numbers that we have already, and the biggest problem that we have is that not everyone is accounted for. Now, you do not know which individuals are here under which premise. This is why it is important this time around, when we are dealing with this, let us open our arms as a country, but let us ensure that everyone is accounted for, because that is going to assist us even moving forward beyond this time. Let's say we are able to intervene as SADC, the African Union is able to intervene, everything now is back to normal. It's time to actually say, not that Siyabagxotha, but now what we have done, what we could to assist, now they must go back home. We know who's who in the country, because it's going to assist us moving forward. So I think a more monitored approach, an approach that does not just open the gates wide open without registering individuals that are coming within the country, would be an approach that could assist us as a country moving forward, so that we are able to deal with this. Also, this issue of these stations can also assist us, as we know that on a daily basis, there are people who are trying to cross the border. So you are able to attend to two challenges at the same time. You are able to monitor the Mozambican phenomenon, but at the very same time, you are able to deal with those who are not coming because there is distress in their countries, but they are coming because they are seeking opportunity, but they do not want to go via the normal routes and the legal routes. So with these stations, we'll be able to deal with that. So I think with as South Africa, if we could approach it that way, would be able to deal with some of the challenges without actually depriving Mozambicans of refuge in times such as these.
Mr. Ntshona, it sounds to me like you are highlighting the importance of proactive planning, especially when it comes to border security. What measures do you then propose or think are needed to be taken at the border to really manage this potential influx without destabilizing South Africa even further?
Thank you so much. If you remember, we have had, if you look over the past 10 years before this dispensation, you would see that there are reports that suggest that we actually deported close to 500,000 immigrants that have come into this country, but that is not assisted. They have come in the country again because we have porous borders. Let's just put it like that. Of porous borders. And if you have porous borders, you're not going to manage the influx of people coming in and going out. And it is not just people. It could be arms, it could be drugs, and we have a society right now that is unruly, and some of the contributing factors could actually be the porous borders. So if as a country we want to protect the space that we are in and be able to deal with the challenges that we're faced with, one of the areas we are going to manage is going to be the borders. What comes in and what goes out. Who comes in and who actually goes out of our borders. It becomes imperative for any country, if you want to maintain law and order in your country, to isolate. In fact, COVID taught us this. You isolate what comes from the outside, deal with what you have in the inside. Now, this is not assuming that all that is within the inside is good, but you are saying I can manage by isolating what is within the borders, and then and welcome what comes from outside, or who comes from the outside at my pace, because I'll be able to regulate movement in between the borders and direct the people who would like to come to South Africa to the official means of coming in the country. You know, right now, we are grey listed. Part of us being grey listed is that there are billions of rands that actually moved through 57,000 SIM cards that are unregistered, and we can't account for that. Now, we must be able to close the space for people to do as they please in our country so that we're able to maintain law and order, but also the microeconomy. Right now, there are a number of businesses that must re-register or register for the very first time after years of operating because we have not mended the space within the border. So a proactive stance for us as a country in protection of the sovereignty of the state, and not only that, maintaining law and order in our state and ensuring that we do not actually devalue our country to a point where it is a banana republic. So a proactive stance becomes imperative for us to maintain South Africa.
Zama, before we let you go, let's get into an issue you just discussed with us on the socioeconomic impact of this. So the ATM says it's concerned about the socioeconomic challenges that South Africa is already facing. How do you think an influx of refugees could then affect the country's economy and social fabric? And what steps should the government then take to mitigate these effects?
Thank you so much. When you look at the laws of this country regulating people coming in the country, number one, we are part of individuals who are saying South Africa is open for business. If you would like to come and invest your 5 million rand in the country, employ 60% of your employees being South African, come by all means. The macroeconomic space is open. That kind of influx assists the country because, as we know, government can only create a conducive environment wherein we could actually invest, but the government itself cannot shoulder the issue of job creation. That kind of influx is welcome. People must come legally in the country and actually invest. But now there is also a challenge. When you have limited resources, when there is an influx of individuals from outside the border, which you have not factored into your calculations. Let's talk about water, available water. If you have residents, an X number of residents, and with this particular dam, you are servicing, let's just say 2,000 homes. And with the number of liters that you have, you can go for 2 years. As soon as you have that influx, you are going to speak to the depletion of what is already available. Same applies with work opportunities. If you have an X number of jobs that is available, which you have allocated for the people who are citizens of this country, when there's an influx of people coming in the country, and those people are not coming with any kind of business or any kind of injection, as would be the case, presumably, in the case of people who are running away from persecution. Now, what is going to happen is that of the little that you have, you would have to share with those individuals.
Right.
And without any monitoring system, you are not able to plan on how to stretch the resources so that the resources are able to speak to being able to respond to the demand that is created by the high influx of individuals that are coming from other countries.